Sports really won't make that much of a difference in your life. Trust me. This is a sentence that I heard more than once in my 20 years of life. We all have something that we can probably look back on and see that it was one of the things that helped to shape us into who we are. For me, that thing was softball. Today, I'm going to relive and tell the story of one of the events that made the most difference to me as a person today. Okay, imagine this. You're in 6th grade, and the coach of a middle school softball team calls and asks you if you want to play for him on his middle school team. Not only that, but it's for a school that you don't even go to. You're probably ecstatic, right? I was too. I was so excited that I would be able to play for my first school team as a 6th grader, since many girls don't even make the team until 7th grade, and some of them not even until 8th. I was so excited that the coach thought that I was good enough for his team. I spent the next several weeks preparing myself for tryouts. Anytime the field was open, I was there. My dad and I were there 7 nights a week trying to get extra repetitions and practices in. I worked with my pitching coach to learn a couple of extra pitches, and I worked with my hitting coach to tweak some things that were preventing me from hitting to my fullest potential. I told all of my friends that I was planning to try out, and I was confident in how the season would go because the coach himself had asked me to try out. I began to meet the other girls that were going to play, and we instantly all became really close friends. Okay, looking back, I know I jumped the gun, but I was so excited and I was only about 10 years old, so none of that really occurred to me then. Finally, the first day of tryouts came. I could hardly sleep the night before, and I even remember having an intense workout followed by practice that morning. I wanted to make sure that I was loose and ready to go before tryouts started. I checked the clock every single minute, it seemed like, just to make sure I wasn't going to be late and that I had everything ready to go. When I got there, I was greeted by the same coach that asked me to come try out, and he told me that he was excited for our season together to get started. I just couldn't wait to put that jersey on, even though that's not even the school that I went to. The first night of tryouts went great. I had a great showing, and I was really confident. Finally, the next day of tryouts came along. My first day jitters were gone, and I felt even better than I had the day before. I had even a better showing that night, and I was sure that this was going to be the best season yet. Little did I know, this would be my last time practicing with the Seymour Middle School softball team. The next day, we all met with the coaches to see who would represent the blue and gold that season. When it came my turn, the same exact coach that had called me a week ago and begged me to try out looked me in the face and said, "I'm sorry, you didn't make the team. Maybe next year, though. You're still young and you have plenty of time to learn. We expect you to be out here next year better than ever, and we can't wait to have you play as a 7th grader." Those words burned into my memory, and I can still remember the deep pit that I felt in my stomach as I heard them. I walked through the entire team, and I kept my composure. But I remember that the second I got into my dad's truck, I lost it. My heart was broken. The one thing that I knew I could accomplish had been stripped away from me. The coach that had begged me to try out had then turned me down. At the time, it seemed like a really big deal, but I had no idea what was about to come out of this experience. As a girl who has been on the field since only being 4 years old, a life without softball seemed like something that would never happen to me. However, in this moment, that's where my mind was at. I didn't want anything to do with softball, and I was ready to be done with every single sport that I played. I had poured my heart, soul, blood, sweat, and tears into these tryouts, and they told me that I wasn't good enough. I had no idea what to do. For about a week, I didn't want to play anything. I saw all of my friends leave school and go to practice for the team that I wasn't able to play on. I remember several people calling me and asking me how tryouts went, and I had to tell every single one of them the outcome, that I had not made the team. Several of the girls that made the team texted me and asked me if I had made the team like they had, and I had to tell each of them as well to have a great season, but that I wouldn't be there with them. After my week of tears and confusion, though, I decided that this was not going to define me. I decided that I would get back on the field and I would practice harder than I had ever practiced before. I began waking up early to hit my backyard before school, and instead of going to sleepovers with my friends on the weekends, I was at softball tournaments. Instead of playing on a normal travel ball team, I decided to play for a travel ball team that was looking for eventual college exposure. As a student, I studied harder and I put more time into my homework, and for homework that I thought was difficult, I found a tutor. Grades are very important to college coaches, and I learned this very quickly, even as a 6th grader. For the next 2 years, I decided not to try out for middle school ball, but to start preparing for high school tryouts, which would be even more of a challenge. Instead of competing with girls at tryouts that were 2 years older than me, I would be competing against girls that were 3 years older than me, with developed bodies and minds and much more experience on the softball field. Beyond that, I was going to be competing against chemistry that the middle school team had built over the last 3 years. I was a nervous wreck, and I definitely was not nearly as confident as I was for middle school tryouts. But yet again, in the weeks before tryouts, I decided to work harder than ever, getting the extra reps and the extra practices, just as I had 3 years ago. Except this time, I was determined. I was not going to let that coach define who I was as a softball player. I had unbelievable success in my travel ball tournaments, and I had gained confidence back that I had lost just 3 years ago. I was excited for these tryouts, and I couldn't wait to play for the high school softball team. As tryouts approached, I became more and more anxious, but again, I was ready. I was as physically and mentally prepared as a player that I had ever been, and I couldn't wait to get out there and show something for all the intense work and hours I had been putting in over the last 3 years. Finally, tryouts came, and I had another great showing, just as I had in 6th grade. I was confident yet again, and maybe jumped the gun a little bit then too. However, I used my experience from middle school to fuel an anger and a confidence in myself when I was on that field. I had great tryouts yet again, and I was excited to come and see my name on the list of players that had made the team the next morning. When I got to the field the next morning, I saw my name on that list. It was one of the biggest senses of achievement that I have ever felt. I was ecstatic yet again. I love softball yet again. Furthermore, by my sophomore year, I was a starting pitcher on the Seymour High School softball team. We only lost one game that entire season across the state, led by myself and one other pitcher that we had on our team. As a junior, we made it to the sub-state game, and I was the only pitcher that we had, and I was on top of the world. My senior year, we made it to the state tournament, and I was the statewide MVP and also the statewide pitcher of the year. I hit 23 home runs my senior year, and alongside my catcher, I led my team to one of the most successful seasons in Seymour High School history. I committed and signed with Emory Henry College on a full-ride scholarship to play softball and to come in as a starting pitcher in only my first year as a freshman. I ended up playing for that same middle school coach when I played high school ball, and I never let him forget cutting me just 7 years prior to that successful season. Although I decided not to play college ball, I still find that being recruited was one of the biggest achievements I had in my whole sports career. So I recognize this as something that formed me into who I am. I now realize that you must work towards everything, even when you know you've got it in the bag. I believe in myself more now than I did as a 10-year-old that tried out for some middle school softball team. As a person, I have realized just how important hard work is, and I began to put the same effort into my studies and my work that I used to put into sports. I learned that not everything in life will ever be handed to you on a golden platter, and that some things just aren't meant to be, no matter how bad you want them to. In my opinion, this event shaped me into who I am today. So getting cut from the middle school team seemed like it was going to be the end of the world for me at the time, but I had no idea what was going to come out of that. I'm so thankful that I was cut from that team and that I decided not to quit sports altogether. I made the best of friends, and I developed a healthy sense of pride after accomplishing all that I accomplished. If I had not been cut from that team, I probably would have become extremely complacent with myself, and I may not have ever developed into the athlete nor the person that I ended up becoming. Figuratively speaking, the next time you are cut from the middle school softball team, remember that it is preparing you for the high school career of a lifetime.